Tactical friction exploded. June 1944. In the bocage of Normandy, two top British commanders clashed over the speed of the Allied offensive. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery demanded methodical, grinding attrition, while 8th Corps Commander General Richard O'Connor urged immediate, aggressive armored breakthroughs. As casualties mounted near Caen, a heated command debate threatened the unity of the Allied advance. Why did Montgomery refuse O'Connor's dynamic tactical strategy at the most critical turning point of the Normandy campaign? The Allied landings on D-Day secured a fragile foothold along the French coastline, but the immediate operational objectives remained unfulfilled. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, commanding the 21st Army Group, faced ferocious opposition from German armored divisions concentrated around the strategic city of Caen. Montgomery's strategic framework relied heavily on a phase-by-phase operational approach designed to attrit enemy forces while drawing German armor away from the American sector. However, this methodical pace generated intense frustration among subordinate commanders who witnessed their infantry regiments taking devastating casualties in the dense hedgerows. Among the most vocal critics was General Richard O'Connor, a brilliant tactical mind who had recently escaped Italian captivity and taken command of the British 8th Corps. O'Connor believed that Montgomery's reliance on slow infantry pushes was allowing the German high command to continuously reinforce their defensive lines. Having achieved legendary status during Operation Compass in the Western Desert by completely annihilating the Italian 10th Army through rapid armored maneuvers, O'Connor possessed a deeply ingrained belief in mobility and speed. Upon analyzing the situation around Caen, O'Connor recognized that traditional infantry frontal assaults against dug-in SS panzer divisions were resulting in unsustainable attrition. He advocated for concentrated high-speed armored thrusts designed to penetrate weak points in the German line before heavy artillery could react. Montgomery, however, remained deeply skeptical of deep armored penetrations without comprehensive, methodical infantry support. The Field Marshal was haunted by the massive troop losses of the First World War and was determined not to risk a catastrophic tactical reverse that could stall the entire Allied theater. This fundamental disagreement on operational doctrine set the stage for a sharp confrontation behind closed doors at 21st Army Group headquarters. During a formal briefing prior to the launch of Operation Epsom, O'Connor directly challenged Montgomery's cautious timeline. He argued forcefully that delaying armored exploitation until all infantry objectives were secured was playing directly into the hands of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. O'Connor asserted that speed was the ultimate armor, insisting that a rapid punch through the Odin Valley would force the Germans into a chaotic retreat. Montgomery listened with cold, impassive restraint as his corps commander detailed the operational risks of slow infantry warfare. The tension in the command trailer was palpable as senior staff officers watched the rigid Field Marshal prepare his response. Montgomery firmly dismissed O'Connor's proposals for an immediate, unassisted tank dash, reiterating that uncoordinated armor without infantry clearing operations would lead to mass armor destruction. Operation Epsom commenced under heavy rainfall, forcing 8th Corps to navigate narrow, mud-choked lanes under constant enemy artillery bombardments. O'Connor's armored brigades made initial progress, crossing the River Odin and establishing a precarious bridgehead. However, just as O'Connor had warned, the slow pace of the supporting infantry divisions allowed the German 2nd Cis Panzer Corps to rapidly deploy reserves and counterattack the exposed flanks. As British tank crews fought desperately to hold the line at Hill, 112 O'Connor requested immediate permission to unleash his remaining armored reserves to break the stalemate. Montgomery intervened directly, overriding O'Connor's tactical instincts and ordering 8th Corps to transition from an offensive breakthrough to a rigid defensive posture. The decision left O'Connor deeply frustrated, convinced that a historic opportunity to crush the German armor had been needlessly squandered. Despite the operational halt, Montgomery maintained to Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force that the operation was progressing exactly according to his master plan. He argued that by drawing the bulk of Germany's elite panzer divisions to the British sector near Caen, he was creating the exact conditions needed for General Omar Bradley's U.S. First Army to execute a massive breakout further west. However, senior American commanders, including General George S. Patton, expressed growing impatience with Montgomery's slow progress and heavy reliance on attrition. Private intelligence reports reaching Montgomery indicated that dissatisfaction was mounting at the highest levels of Allied command. O'Connor, witnessing the severe casualties suffered by his own men, once again confronted Montgomery, presenting documented operational logs showing that slow infantry advances were inflating casualty figures without securing decisive territorial gains. When O'Connor presented his tactical critique, Montgomery delivered a blunt, uncompromising response that defined his command philosophy. Montgomery stated that he would not alter his grand strategy to satisfy individual corps commanders or external political pressures. He made it clear that British manpower reserves were strictly limited, and he refused to gamble his divisions on high-risk armored dashes through dense terrain. Montgomery reminded O'Connor that the ultimate purpose of Eighth Corps was not to capture territory for headlines, but to relentlessly tie down and wear down the German army. O'Connor listened intently, recognizing that his commander's strategic vision was fundamentally unyielding. The debate highlighted a deep doctrinal divide between a fluid desert tactician and a methodical theater commander. The strategic deadlock around Caen deepened as intelligence revealed that the German 9th and 10th SS Panzer divisions were massing for a major counteroffensive. O'Connor knew that if the British forces remained static, they would be subjected to continuous artillery shelling and armored probing attacks. He drafted an alternative operational plan aimed at bypassing heavy defensive strongpoints entirely. However, before O'Connor could submit his proposal, Montgomery unveiled his next major undertaking, Operation Goodwood. This ambitious operation promised to deploy 3 entire British armored divisions in a massive, concentrated thrust east of Caen. It appeared on the surface to be the very armored breakthrough O'Connor had been demanding for weeks. Yet when O'Connor reviewed the operational details of Operation Goodwood, his initial optimism rapidly vanished. The plan called for 3 armored divisions to advance through a narrow, bottleneck corridor bounded by heavy German anti-tank defenses and minefields. Worse, Montgomery had once again limited the immediate infantry support needed to suppress dug-in enemy positions. O'Connor immediately raised urgent objections, warning that sending concentrated armor into a narrow funnel without broad infantry clearing would result in a deadly anti-tank trap. Montgomery, confident in the overwhelming air support promised by Allied Bomber Command, brushed aside O'Connor's warnings and ordered the attack to proceed exactly as written. On July 18, 1944, over 2,000 Allied bombers dropped thousands of tons of explosives on German positions around Caen, launching Operation Goodwood. British tanks surged forward into the smoking landscape, initially meeting little resistance. But as 8th Corps pushed deeper into the Burgabus Ridge, German 88mm anti-tank guns and concealed Tiger tanks opened fire from elevated, undamaged positions. The battlefield quickly transformed into a devastating graveyard of burning Allied armor, precisely as O'Connor had predicted. As news of heavy tank losses reached 21st Army Group headquarters, the personal and professional rift between Montgomery and O'Connor reached a critical breaking point. The catastrophic tank losses along the Burgabus Ridge triggered an immediate political storm that rippled all the way to Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force in London. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, already under intense pressure from Washington to accelerate the European campaign, viewed the tactical setback near Caen as proof of systemic stagnation within British 21st Army Group headquarters. Eisenhower held a private, high-stakes conference with his deputy, Air Chief Marshal Sir Arthur Tedder, who openly advocated for Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery's immediate removal from theater command. Tedder argued forcefully that Montgomery's overcautious nature and relentless attrition tactics were exhausting Allied manpower while delivering minimal territorial expansion. However, Eisenhower recognized that dismissing Britain's premier war hero would create an irrecoverable political rupture within the combined chiefs of staff. Instead of firing Montgomery, Eisenhower dispatched his trusted chief of staff, Major General Walter Bedell Smith, to deliver a scathing personal warning regarding the operational delays in Normandy. When Bedell Smith arrived at Montgomery's mobile headquarters, the atmosphere inside the command trailer was cold and unyielding. Bedell Smith laid out the raw figures. American industrial output and troop deployments were peaking, yet the entire Allied front remained pinned within the narrow Normandy bridgehead. He informed Montgomery that American generals, led by Omar Bradley and George S. Patton, were becoming deeply vocal regarding the misallocation of fuel, ammunition, in strategic priorities. Montgomery countered with supreme confidence, asserting that the heavy fighting around Caen had successfully drawn 8 of the 10 German panzer divisions into the British sector. He insisted that his grand design was functioning precisely as intended, creating the exact operational vacuum needed for the U.S. First Army to launch Operation Cobra. Yet behind this calm exterior, Montgomery realized that his strategic authority was hanging by a thread, prompting him to reevaluate his relationship with his subordinate commanders. Seeking to stabilize his internal command structure, Montgomery summoned General Richard O'Connor for an urgent face-to-face evaluation at 8th Corps headquarters. Montgomery knew that O'Connor possessed unmatched tactical prestige among British officers, owing to his legendary victory over the Italian 10th Army in North Africa. However, Montgomery also viewed O'Connor's aggressive desert tactics as an operational hazard in the restricted, heavily mined terrain of the European theater. During the meeting, O'Connor did not mince words, pointing directly to the tactical map and demonstrating how the lack of immediate infantry suppression had doomed 8th Corps armored brigades during Operation Goodwood. O'Connor argued that if future operations were to succeed, Corps commanders required absolute tactical autonomy to bypass strongpoints, rather than launching frontal assaults into prepared kill zones. Montgomery listened intently, his face completely devoid of emotion, before delivering a sharp operational rebuke that stunned his veteran subordinate. Montgomery informed O'Connor in no uncertain terms that single-axis armored thrusts were fundamentally obsolete against modern German anti-tank defense networks. He stated bluntly that the primary role of 8th Corps was not to seek independent tactical glory, but to serve as a massive anvil against which the German army's armored reserves would be systematically destroyed. Montgomery emphasized that every British division lost in Normandy could not be replaced, making methodical caution the only viable path to long-term victory. O'Connor recognized the cold logic in his commander's attrition strategy, but he remained deeply convinced that such rigid operational control was needlessly sacrificing hundreds of frontline soldiers every single day. The meeting ended with an uneasy truce as O'Connor returned to his Corps command, aware that any further tactical friction would jeopardize his position in the Allied order of battle. On July 25, 1944, the dynamic of the Normandy campaign shifted dramatically as General Omar Bradley launched Operation Cobra west of St. Lo. Following an overwhelming aerial bombardment by thousands of Allied heavy bombers, American armored divisions broke through the weakened German lines and began a rapid sweeping exploitation toward Avranches. Patton's newly activated U.S. Third Army surged into Brittany and swung eastward, threatening to encircle the entire German 7th Army in a massive pocket near Falaise. As the German High Command frantically attempted to plug the collapsing Western Front, Montgomery ordered British and Canadian forces to launch Operation Bluecoat to pin down remaining enemy armor. O'Connor's 8th Corps was assigned to lead the attack through the treacherous bocage terrain near Vire, marking a critical test of whether his aggressive armored principles could finally be put into practice. Recognizing that the German defense was buckling under the weight of the American breakout, O'Connor saw a fleeting opportunity to execute a rapid maneuver that could completely sever the enemy's line of retreat. He ordered his armored divisions to bypass heavy opposition strongpoints, pushing dark night advances through narrow dirt roads to capture key bridges before German demolition teams could detonate them. O'Connor personally drove to the front lines in an unarmored scout car to direct traffic and maintain the momentum of the advance. His dynamic leadership enabled 8th Corps to capture the strategic high ground around Souleuvre, securing a vital gap through which Allied forces could pour. For the first time since D-Day, O'Connor's vision of fluid, high-speed armored warfare seemed to be achieving spectacular results on the battlefield. However, O'Connor's rapid advance created a dangerous, exposed flank as neighboring infantry divisions struggled to keep pace through the dense hedgerows. German panzer units, utilizing concealed 88mm anti-tank guns, launched fierce local counterattacks into the gaps between the advancing British columns. When news of the exposed flank reached 21st Army Group headquarters, Montgomery reacted instantly, issuing an immediate order to halt 8th Corps' forward movement until the trailing infantry divisions could establish secure defensive lines. O'Connor was furious, believing that halting the armored spearhead at the moment of maximum German confusion would allow the enemy to reorganize and construct a new defensive line. He personally called 21st Army Group headquarters, demanding an immediate audience with Montgomery to fight for the continuation of the offensive. The phone call between O'Connor and Montgomery's staff officers was marked by sharp, uncompromising exchanges. O'Connor insisted that operational momentum was the only defense against German counterattacks, warning that stopping the tanks would turn a brilliant breakthrough into another static battle of attrition. But Montgomery remained firm in his directive, refusing to allow any corps commander to operate outside his centralized master plan. Montgomery believed that an uncoordinated advance into the deep German rear risked a severe tactical reversal that could disrupt the broader encirclement forming at Falaise. Overridden once again, O'Connor had no choice but to order his armored spearheads to dig in, watching helplessly as German units seized the delay to organize a stubborn defense around Veer. As the Falaise pocket began to close in mid-August 1944, the friction between Montgomery and his senior commanders reached an all-time high. The Allied armies trapped over 100,000 German soldiers in a shrinking cauldron. But delays in closing the narrow gap allowed thousands of elite SS personnel to escape eastward across the Seine. American generals openly criticized Montgomery for failing to move British forces quickly enough to seal the pocket from the north. Within the British camp, O'Connor's frustration with Montgomery's centralized, cautious command style had reached a boiling point. O'Connor realized that despite his tactical successes, his operational philosophy was fundamentally incompatible with Montgomery's doctrine, setting the stage for an inevitable final confrontation that would decide his military future. The premature halt of 8th Corps' advance near Veer exposed the profound operational friction dividing British high command during the Normandy breakout. While General Dwight D. Eisenhower and his American field commanders pushed for rapid, deep armored penetrations to completely destroy retreating German forces, Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery maintained a tightly controlled, step-by-step advance designed to avoid exposed flanks. General Richard O'Connor watched with growing dismay as the momentum generated by his tank crews slipped away. O'Connor's tactical instinct, honed during the lightning campaigns of the Western Desert, demanded relentless pressure on a collapsing enemy. However, Montgomery's rigid theater strategy prioritized absolute structural cohesion over high-risk exploitation, creating an inescapable impasse between the two senior commanders. Logistical bottlenecks compounded the operational paralysis along the British sector. The continuous delivery of fuel, high-explosive artillery shells, and replacement armor to the forward spearheads required flawless coordination across fragile supply lines stretching back to the Mulberry harbors. Montgomery's quartermaster staff prioritized the accumulation of massive artillery reserves over mobile armored logistics, signaling that future operations would remain bound to heavy, methodical rather than swift maneuver. O'Connor submitted detailed operational logs to 21st Army Group headquarters, demonstrating that his armored brigades were operating far below their logistics capacity due to administrative holds. The formal rejection of his appeal confirmed that Montgomery had no intention of modifying his operational framework. By late August 1944, as the shattered remnants of the German 7th Army retreated across the Seine, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force initiated a comprehensive restructuring of the ground command architecture. General Eisenhower officially assumed direct operational command of all Allied land forces in Western Europe, stepping above Montgomery in the operational chain. This structural shift emboldened American commanders to advocate for a broad front strategy, distributing critical logistics across multiple army groups. Montgomery bitterly opposed this realignment, demanding instead that all Allied resources and fuel be concentrated into a single, massive narrow thrust under his direct command to punch through northern Germany. O'Connor, reviewing the strategic proposals, privately cautioned that a narrow front thrust without adequate flank security mirrored the exact tactical flaws that had crippled Operation Goodwood. The strategic debate reached its climax during the planning stages for Operation Market Garden in September 1944. Montgomery proposed an ambitious airborne and armored offensive designed to seize key bridges across the Rhine in the Netherlands, bypassing the formidable Siegfried Line. The operation required the British Essex Corps to advance rapidly along a single, narrow highway corridor flanked by soft, marshy terrain. When the operational directives were circulated to Corps commanders, O'Connor immediately identified severe tactical vulnerabilities in the plan. He warned that committing an entire armored army along a single elevated causeway would allow a determined enemy to halt the entire offensive simply by disabling the lead vehicles. Despite O'Connor's tactical warnings and intelligence reports indicating the presence of depleted SS Panzer divisions restructuring near Arnhem, Montgomery ordered Operation Market Garden to proceed without modification. 8th Corps was assigned a supporting role on the eastern flank of the main line of advance, tasked with clearing German strongpoints to secure XXX Corps' exposed supply artery. As predicted, the primary armored spearhead became immobilized along the bottlenecked highway under concentrated German anti-tank fire. O'Connor's divisions fought valiantly to widen the corridor, but the operational delays proved fatal to the airborne troops trapped at Arnhem Bridge. The tragic failure of Market Garden validated O'Connor's warnings, cementing a permanent rift between 8th Corps Command and 21st Army Group headquarters. In the aftermath of the Arnhem disaster, the operational relationship between Montgomery and O'Connor deteriorated rapidly. O'Connor continued to voice blunt, objective assessments during high command briefings, refusing to endorse operational plans that relied on flawed tactical assumptions. Montgomery, increasingly sensitive to criticism from both American allies and domestic staff officers, viewed O'Connor's independent posture as an untenable threat to staff discipline. In November 1944, citing the need for administrative restructuring prior to the final assault into the German heartland, Montgomery quietly orchestrated O'Connor's reassignment away from the European theater of operations and reassigned to general headquarters in India, effectively removing one of Britain's most brilliant desert tacticians from the final defeat of Nazi Germany. While official cables cited health concerns and administrative requirements, senior military observers recognized the relief as the final act of a long-standing doctrinal clash. O'Connor accepted the transfer with dignified professional restraint, leaving behind a corps that had suffered immense casualties, pursuing a strategy he had consistently challenged. Montgomery retained absolute operational control over 21st Army Group, but the removal of his most competent tactical critic left a lasting stain on his command legacy. The doctrinal duel between Bernard Montgomery and Richard O'Connor represents one of the most significant command debates of the Second World War. It highlighted the fundamental tension between a theater commander bound to systematic, low-risk attrition and a brilliant field general who understood that speed and flexibility are the ultimate currencies of modern armored warfare. While Montgomery achieved ultimate victory through sheer industrial mass and methodical organization, his refusal to integrate O'Connor's dynamic maneuver tactics prolonged the Normandy campaign and cost thousands of Allied lives in the hedgerows of the France. History continues to debate whether O'Connor's aggressive armored strategies could have shattered the German front in Normandy weeks earlier had Montgomery granted him the operational freedom he demanded. What remains undeniable is that the friction between Montgomery's rigid caution and O'Connor's tactical audacity defined the pace of the Allied drive toward the Rhine. Had Montgomery adopted O'Connor's high-speed maneuver doctrine early in June 1944, would the Western Allies have broken out of Normandy in time to end the war in Europe before the winter of 1944? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.